Well, we've got two Mikes on stage, Mike Butcher from TechCrunch and Mike Novogratz from Galaxy Digital. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. Well, first of all, how are you? How's everything going? Any quick updates?
Yeah, I get to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to get here. I'm feeling good.
Fantastic. I'm so glad you're with us. Anyway, Mike, you've obviously been an incredible investor. You were quite a big name back in Wall Street back in the day. Went into crypto. And you are, you're very much a very interesting market mover. A lot of the things that you say move markets on crypto, on Bitcoin, and on Ethereum. Do you feel that the power you've got, the voice that you've got, is, how do you feel that you're using that voice at the moment?
Listen, from the very start, I think I was first public about crypto in late 2013, and it was accidental. I was at a conference, I was talking about frontier currencies, and I mentioned Bitcoin. The next day I was on the cover of the FT, which luckily said Bitcoin was going to go to 1,000 when it was trading about 200. And so I looked smart for a short period of time. My thought about my role was trying to bring people into the tent. I just saw you had, 4 of our competitors and soon to be one of our colleagues on stage. And while we do compete, right? I remember trying to buy B2C2, and God, I wish I had bought B2C2 back in, early 2018. We certainly compete. I see most of our competitors as collaborators, right? This industry is so new, right? We are so small that all of our jobs is to bring people into the tent. And I've had a unique pulpit, from CNBC or Bloomberg or conferences, partly because I'm the oldest guy in crypto, partly because I had a hedge fund that was successful before I started, to try to bring people into the tent. And so in a lot of ways, that's my role in the whole ecosystem. I'm not an engineer. I kind of understand the difference between, proof of history and proof of authority and proof of stake. And, I'm not a computer science guy. I really am a proselytizer.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely doing very well. And I noticed that you were recently quoted as saying that Bitcoin had been overbought as a series of fundamental factors and positive news stories triggered hype. When you say overbought, what do you mean by that? You say that the market went long.
The hardest part about being on TV a lot and being quoted a lot is context.
Right.
Right? What time frame are you talking about? And so, when something goes from 42,000 to 56,000, and I wasn't saying in this recent context, markets usually pause, right? They consolidate, they hit a new range before they take their next leg up, right? Trees don't grow to the sky in a linear fashion, in an exponential fashion, right? They go up, they come down, they go up, they come down in what I think is going to be a great bull market. And so there's times when markets get overbought. You can see it in the premium that futures trade at. You can see it just in the general sentiment. When the futures premium trades at a giant interest rate, you can be pretty sure that you're going to get a correction.
Yeah, I absolutely, you're correct. But you're also, I think, interesting that you observed recently that, companies like Visa buying an NFT, Walmart and Amazon looking at it. What are the kinds of things that you're seeing from these very large corporations, for instance, in the NFT space?
Let's talk about Visa for a second, because I think it's fascinating. We, know those guys well, and I brought the guy that's running their crypto space into just talk to our management committee one day. And what was so interesting, they're approaching it so smartly. I said, why'd you buy an NFT? They were like, we understand crypto, and this is about community. And for us to go out and try to sell something first would be counterintuitive. It's not counterintuitive to most companies, but it is counterintuitive to a company that understands crypto. So their idea was, let's participate in the community. Let's be a buyer. Let's symbolically show that we care, that we're part of this. Because they really think that digital goods, selling digital goods, and people buying digital goods off their visas will be a huge part of their growth story. I mean, think about this. This is a $500 billion company that is pivoting part of their business thinking digital goods is going to be 10x, right? The stats that he gave us were right now, the average Visa holder swipes their card 0.9 times a day. And they think in the future, it will be 10 times a day because we can collect so many more digital goods than we can, Amazon packages that show up at your house that your wife seems to keep ordering.
Or your husband. That's certainly my case. Tell us a little bit more about Galaxy Digital at the moment. What kinds of strategies are you looking at? So what's interesting you most as a company?
So listen, Tim Grant is who our new head of Europe is in the audience today. We're expanding in Europe big. Everyone should say hi to him at one point. We're expanding in Europe. Our basic premise, and we started from my family office way back, was let's use our own capital to understand these markets. And let's invest across the full ecosystem, from protocols to security to exchanges to coins. Let's trade them, let's invest in them. And now let's take that knowledge that we've learned out to customers. So we have an asset management business that is growing quickly. We've recently announced a partnership with Invesco around ETFs, one of the biggest ETF players in the game. We have an investment banking business, right, an advisory business. We can't hire fast enough there. Broadly giving advice and capital formation to companies that are in the space. We have a sales and trading and a prime business. I saw everyone up there is fighting over prime. Our hat's in the ring. I think we've got the best derivative desk on the street. We've gotten some really seasoned derivative traders and kind of corporate restructuring type stuff. If you think about it, every one of the token communities all of a sudden has a treasury that needs to get managed, that needs to get hedged at times, that needs to get traded. We've got a venture business. By far the most exciting business from an intellectual capital expense is venture, right? Because you're seeing all the new projects. And so that we break that up into kind of Web3 and then the interactive space and NFTs, metaverse, everything else. Now there's a big overlap between those things and they're kind of merging to one. And we've got a proprietary trading shop, which I actually also run, which is, long the right coins and short the right coins. It's a classic, both macro hedge fund / long short equity hedge fund combined. We've got mining, right? We're proprietary mining. We're providing services to miners. That's derivative services and hedging. That's fundraising. That's lending. We've got a lending business. And most exciting, we are at one point finally going to close our transaction with BitGo once we get through the rest of the regulatory checks, and then we'll have the second biggest custodian and the biggest wallet business. And so I think lots of synergies there. Couldn't be more excited. We're today, if we look at the combined entities, about 450 people. We think we'll be over 500 by Jan 1 if we can hire people. That's the hardest challenge right now is, can you hire people fast enough and committed enough? There are so many opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. There is a global talent war, and certainly the move to remote working means that everybody's in play effectively to some extent. And you mentioned your BitGo transaction there. What's your view about the regulatory aspect right now? Do you think that the SEC is just sort of making grunting noises to scare people?
No, listen, so I know Gary Gensler from my days at Goldman Sachs. We worked together. I know him from his time at CFTC and quite frankly at MIT. I taught one of his classes. I was a guest lecturer at one of his Bitcoin classes or crypto classes. He's very smart. He is very, committed to what he does. And he wants to regulate crypto. He wants to be the sheriff of Cryptoville, I once said. He doesn't have full authority to, right? Because of the newness of our industry. Is Bitcoin a security? It's not a security. Therefore, can the SEC regulate it? Well, not Bitcoin itself, but if Bitcoin is lent, can they? These are all really nuanced questions. He's going to push like any aggressive guy who wants to be in charge is going to. The industry is going to push back through lobbying, and I think this is going to be a period of a lot of regulatory uncertainty. What I know is true is that the crypto community at large, myself included, didn't do a good enough job lobbying domestic politicians, educating them so they really understand what they're talking about, right? And so there's a huge push right now from ourselves and lots of organizations to try to educate and work with the regulators, but more importantly, the politicians, right, who sit on top of the regulators. I'm optimistic that we come to something reasonable. Listen, I do think there are excesses in crypto that should be swatted down, right? A lot of the credit shops taking customer deposits, taking huge amounts of customer deposits, i.e. feels like a bank, lend them out at times with monster leverage on their balance sheet, and borrow deposits short term and lend them long term. Like, that's a recipe for disaster, right? It is. It's the first thing I'd see if I was a regulator. I'd say, I'm worried about that. And it's an unregulated non-bank bank. And so, does Gary have the authority to shine light on that? Of course, he can shine light on anything. Does he have the authority to regulate? Well, they're trying. And so what I hope is you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like, you've got to leave room for innovation. You can't dig into every last new innovation and try to regulate where it might be in 2 years, not where it is. I think the biggest decision is stablecoins, right? The U.S. has a big decision to make on how we approach stablecoins. Is it going to be a central bank issued currency, which I think is, quite frankly, a disaster? I don't think governments are good at innovating. I don't think anyone in the U.S. certainly, and I don't think anyone in the West wants to give up as much privacy as the Chinese are willing to give up.
I'm so glad you said that, because I wanted to ask you about the stablecoin issue. The big discussion, especially a conference like this, is going to be about DeFi. So what do you think is the world of DeFi looks like with national stablecoins working in the ecosystem? What's your view of where that is now and where it will go to?
It's still early. I did a call with the central bank governor of a big Latin American country, and he was pushing for a more centralized stablecoin because it would give him so much great data on spending and velocity of money that would allow him a better dashboard to be a good central banker. And I was like, dude, yes, but like, the country you happen to live in has a president who's got some pretty extreme views right now, and that, like all countries, the politics swing back and forth. I don't think at least half the country wants him to have the data on every last thing they spend. And so I am a giant alarm ringer about centralized stablecoins, and a proponent of what Brian Brooks came up with when he was at the OCC, which is those central banks should set guidelines of how stablecoins should behave, and the private industry should create them, and they should run on public blockchains. If it's Ethereum, or quite frankly, they should be able to run on multiple blockchains. That's going to get decided in the U.S., I think, in the next 3 to 6 months, and I think it's a huge decision.
I see. Well, it's definitely one to watch, as you say. Moving on to Ethereum, it's already passed Bitcoin in network transactions and usage a few months ago. What do you think about Ethereum passing Bitcoin in market cap now?
Listen, I think the industry has to grow up and realize Bitcoin has its role to play and a use case, which is very disconnected from what Ethereum is, right? Bitcoin is going to be mostly used as a store of value as digital gold. There is a chance that with Lightning, it competes in the payments world, but I don't think it in the long run is actually helpful for the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? I think digital gold is such an important role to play globally, right? We all have a right to save stuff and have our hard work not be inflated away. And Bitcoin perfectly, fits that role. And so if you think of Bitcoin as a finished product, which it is, right? It's not going to change. It works. We should store that, and we should compare that versus gold, not Ethereum. Ethereum is a technology play, right? I think one of the big wake-up calls the investor community, and quite frankly, the CEO community, right, the user community had with the explosion of NFTs was, oh hell, crypto's not just an asset play like Bitcoin, it's a tech play. This is Web3. And so when I think about Ethereum, I think the more applicable comparisons are Ethereum versus Solana, Ethereum versus Luna, Ethereum versus Polkadot. How is the level 1 battle going to turn out, right? Will level 1s collectively be larger than Bitcoin at one point? Maybe, probably, I don't know, right? Gold's got a $10 trillion market cap. Bitcoin can 10x from here just to replace gold. I think it will. Technology plays are harder to value, right? We're going to value them as networks. And I think the networks that grow the fastest, that have the most developers, that have most transactions are going to win. Now, the last thing I'd say is, a blockchain is not a blockchain is not a blockchain. Ethereum is going to be, and Vitalik talks about what he called it, the Holy Trinity, or I'm going to get that wrong, right? Speed, security, and decentralization, trying to get those three pieces to fit. Each of these level 1 solutions is playing on different strengths there. And so right now, why people are loving things like Luna and Solana is, speed wins, because they're really easier to use in terms of transaction speeds. They are, and will the market will decide and regulators decide, are they secure and decentralized enough to allow the future of finance, the future of commerce to be built on top of? I think that would be the interesting question for regulators to think about. They're so far behind that at this point that I think it's going to be the market that determines these things. But so that's what I'm looking at. Bitcoin by itself, level 2s by themselves, and then level 1s by themselves, and then what gets built on top of those level 1s.
Right, I see. So you mentioned actually just earlier, as we were chatting, things like the metaverse, and that's coming up right now. We also will have a session on that today, and also on gaming. NFTs are playing a lot in that world now. I'm sure everyone here would love to hear your views on the NFT hype, but also its potential as an asset class, and also as a technology perhaps as well. What are some of your thoughts?
Well, listen, I think NFTs are here to stay, and we are early. That doesn't mean the prices of a Ringer or a Denza or a Punk are going to stay at these elevated levels. I was actually with a friend who owns a bunch of punks yesterday and trying to convince him to take a few chips off the table. He told me I was crazy. I said, I don't know, I've looked at markets a long, long time. At one point, markets don't go straight up forever. They consolidate, they go back down. And even if in the long run, these punks are going to be worth more, 25 million bucks for a punk that was worth $1 million just 4 months ago, seems to me like a pretty good time to at least book some profits and flip it back into Bitcoin or Ethereum or another token. And so I do think, like any market, the prices of crypto art, crypto collectibles will go up and down. But I think the adoption of using blockchains to transfer and store IP is only going to go one direction. And so we continue to invest in infrastructure there. I've never seen a market move as fast as the generative art market or other parts of the NFT space. I mean, I literally 4 months ago had a bunch of those artists at my house, and I was going to buy some of their stuff, and I was kind of getting set up, and then I of course got distracted because I do 1,000 things, and the stuff that I could have bought for 5,000 and 6,000 US is now in the millions. That's not normal in any way, shape, or form. Why is it happening? It's happening for two reasons. There's a lot of crypto wealth out there, right? There's $2.25 trillion of crypto wealth. That's the community that's supporting crypto artists and crypto projects, right? What we've learned in crypto, and this has fascinated me, is that communities can form really quickly, and they have so much more resilience than I ever thought they would. It actually makes valuing things complicated, right? So I told you my valuation metric early on was, okay, Bitcoin versus gold. I can figure that as the store of value, but everything else I thought was going to need to have utility, right? The more developers, the more activity on the blockchain, the more I wanted to be long it. Well, we have lots of things in the crypto community now that have value just because, that are almost like Bitcoins, but they don't serve the same role as Bitcoin. Think about Dogecoin, or think about Cardano, or think about, even XRP. Unbelievably passionate communities. When I tweet something even mildly negative, I get literally, trolled incessantly, at times death threats, at times, told I'm the stupidest guy in the universe. Really passionate, almost like British football teams. You don't want to insult Chelsea fans in Chelsea, or you get a beat down.
It's just as well you're very far away right now.
But so that makes the investment model that you have more confusing, because identity, and we're seeing that sense of identity in NFTs, feels like it could be a permanent feature of valuation going forward. And it's so clear in the NFTs, right? If it's a Bored Ape or a Punk or a Chubby Corn, which is the latest one that my friends were looking at, you become part of the club. And people that are 50 and above don't get that at all at this point. They think this is crazy. But when I talk to my kids and their friends, they get it. And so we'll see. It's too early to say this is going to be a permanent part of the valuation framework. But right now, it is shocking how stubborn it has been. And most interesting is you can look at GameStop in the equity world as, in essence, a crypto, right? It's people's identity. There's not a valuation, calculation that anybody can come up with to justify the market cap of GameStop, but it's identity.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important change that's happening. We're monitoring it really closely. To be honest, I haven't invested a lot of our capital in those projects. I'm not long blockchains that don't have a lot of activity on them with high market caps. But I used to be short them, and now I'm not short them. I'm washing them.
Right, I see. That's a very interesting strategy. Yeah, but you're right. It has definitely, a lot of these things have definitely become part of identity in the same way that we might be football fans, etc. Lastly, I wanted to ask you that London-listed Bitcoin miner Argo Blockchain took out a $25 million loan with Galaxy Digital recently to spend on green Bitcoin mining in West Texas using renewable energy. What's your view on these the renewable energy initiatives in mining? What do you think crypto can do to aid the fight against the climate crisis?
Well, listen, I think it was a real shame, but the crypto community was caught off guard in the original onslaught of, oh my God, this is going to be so anti-ESG. The real numbers are tiny, right? Crypto's contribution to total electricity or total power usage is literally minuscule. But we kind of lost that story. I think we need to keep telling that story. The Bitcoin Mining Council has amazing statistics on literally how not an issue this really is. But given that it's an issue in the public sphere now, and given that I think we all have some responsibility to trend towards a carbon neutral future, I don't see any institutional player in the mining business doing anything but green mining, right? It's going to be untenable from an investor base, and so we're looking at green mines.
So you're saying that there's pushback from the investors into renewables?
100%.
Right.
Yeah, if you went out and said, I'm going to raise a mine and I'm going to build it in Kazakhstani coal, people are going to be like, well, I can't invest, right? And so there might be private capital, or my lights went off. There might be private capital that finds its way in who have less either ethical or concerns, but you're not going to find any institutional capital that finds its way in. And so, the other thing I'd say is the world is moving so fast towards a green future that this issue goes away in a few years, right? As we're bending the curves and solar is getting cheaper hydro is getting, more accessible as people drill down deeper and find steam, and nuclear is showing up again. Like, this won't be a long-term issue for Bitcoin or for any of the cryptocurrency space. And so I think it's on us to tell the story, to make moves in the right direction, and diffuse this as an issue, because it's a red herring.
That's very interesting. That's actually quite a positive and optimistic note to end on, Mike. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for, but I'm so glad you could join us, even if it was virtually, and I think we got a lot of really fascinating insights from you there. But for now, Mike Novogratz from Galaxy Digital, thanks very much for joining us at TOKEN2049. Thanks very much, Mike. Thank you very much.